tennis balls. Like I said, if you have 2 tennis balls, grab those 2 tennis balls. If you don't have to, it's okay. We can work around it. But when we start with the tennis balls, we will start with 2. So if you have to, grab them. If not, I'll give you a different option. I'm going to start you guys just as we normally do, lying on your back in a comfortable position. So grab whatever makes lying on the floor more comfortable for you. Whether that means you place a pillow under your knees, maybe you have a couple of blocks that you like to put under the knees, or maybe support under your head, a pillow, rolled up towel, or blanket. Have your balls and your blocks near your mat, because we won't be coming off of the floor before we start to add the balls. You'll be still lying on your back. But for now, we're just going to find a comfortable position. And if it's okay for you today to actually start, you're in a really long butterfly. And what I mean by that is you're not necessarily going to bring the soles of your feet together, but you will have the knees slightly bent, the feet turned out. Those heels might be a couple fists width distance apart. They might be closer inwards, but the legs are still almost fully extended. So it's not quite a butterfly, but you're still getting that external hip rotation. I like to have my pillows a little more under my thighs. It helps support my low back a little more than just under the knees. Take a moment to shift and adjust anything in your body that might need to find a bit more comfort, might need to move. As you're ready, allow your eyes to softly close. And we'll just start by finding the breath. Slow, deep inhales and exhales, letting the breath soften until you can begin to breathe steadily in through your nose and out through your nose. And just like we do in the 3-part breath, really focusing on finding the breath in the low belly. So the first few breaths, just sort of exaggerating the expansion of the belly, feeling the navel rise towards the ceiling, feeling the navel return to the base of the spine. Full expansion of the belly like a balloon. So we start to warm up the diaphragm and essentially start to warm up the psoas. It's connected to the diaphragm. So the more we can get your diaphragm to move with your breath, the more it's going to start to warm up and kind of open up the psoas. Keep moving the breath through the belly, but try to find a little bit more movement upwards as well. Finding the breath in the ribs, the chest, the collarbone. We'll take about 8 more breaths here. Just the biggest, most expansive breath that you can find. A few more big, deep breaths here. And slowly allowing the breath to sort of fall back into a more neutral movement, but still feeling full movement, full breath.
Start to bring some movements back into your fingers, your toes. You are free to keep your eyes closed the whole time, or at this point, start to blink your eyes back open. Take a nice big stretch, reaching our arms overhead, extending the legs forward, stretching like you just woken in the morning. Take an extra breath in here, fully expanding, letting the low back arch, the belly fill. As you exhale, press the low back into the floor, drive your knees into your chest, give them their first hug. Rock this out a few times side to side. Pay attention to how that bony part of your low back feels against the floor today. If you feel any tension, any stress, any soreness, draw some circles, placing your hands at your knees. Circle your knees evenly around your hips. You'll draw a few circles in one direction, a few circles back the other direction. And then you'll take in and out circles. Palms to the kneecaps, take the knees away from each other, around, back together, and into the chest. The knees are kind of going forwards and back with the circular motion. And you'll do a few, about 4 to 5, one direction. And then 4 to 5 back the other direction until you're even. Good. Now from here, once you're even, we'll squeeze the knees in. Keeping your right knee drawn into your chest, extend the left leg forward. Then you could extend back onto that pillow or block, or maybe come all the way to the floor. As you hug the right knee in, think about hugging a little bit towards the outer rib cage. So you're not going straight to the armpit, but you are going a little outside. So you track with the hip flexor a little bit more. Take a full deep breath in. As you exhale, see if there's a little more space you could draw downwards. Good. Next exhale, you'll bring your left knee back up to meet your right. And as you inhale, extend the right leg forward, switch sides. Hug that left knee a little more toward the outer left rib cage, again, rather than straight across the chest, but not so wide that it's going into the armpit either. So you're still kind of keeping the knee pressing on the belly itself. Take one more breath here. Next exhale, you'll bring right knee back up to meet your left. Both knees get a hug. Again, you're going to draw some circles, knees around the hips, knees together. So we just start to really warm up the low back before we start to add the balls in. Take the circles the other direction. And at any point that we extend your legs forward, you are free to always place supports under your legs, whether they're your blocks, your pillows. For here, extend both legs to the ceiling. Take a moment, just let the blood run through the legs, back down to the low back and belly. You can flex points, circle the ankles, and don't worry about getting the legs all the way straight. It's still pretty early, so I keep a bend in the knees. Exhale, knees back into your chest. I'm going to remove the pillow out of the way. Set your feet on the floor. Take the knees and feet into a teepee position. So you walk the feet to the outer edges of your mat. Let the knees rest together at center. We'll take a couple breaths here to widen the low back. It's also an internal hip stretch. Internal hip rotation, rather. Let the knees start to windshield wiper a little bit side to side. Good. Keeping the legs nice and wide so the knees are staggered. This is really light passive twist for the body and focuses more on your hips than the twist in the back. And go about once more in each direction. Good. Take this back to center, and you'll heel toe your feet in so they're about hips width distance apart. Take fingertips onto your hip bones. Check that the hip bones are level with each other. And then you're just going to lift the hips, kind of lengthen the spine out and bring the low back onto the floor from there. We're going to come into a figure 4 position now. Take your right knee, bring it to your chest. Open the right knee out and cross your right ankle over your left knee into your figure 4. We're just going to hang out right here for a couple breaths. So we're going to come back to the figure 4 position a couple of times. This one, I'm just starting to open up your hips before we start to add the balls. So just letting the right knee fall wide. Left foot for now is staying on the floor. We're going to take just little tiny rocking motions or windshield wipers side to side. Not a whole lot of movement, just a little bit to sort of feel out the low back, the hips, to feel if there's any tightness in the hips themselves, that piriformis area. Good. Come back to center. We'll switch sides. Set the right foot down. Check that the hip bones again are level. The spine is lengthened, and then you'll draw the left knee to the chest and cross your left ankle over your right, letting the left knee fall wide. Same thing here. We're going to keep the right foot planted on the floor for now, and just rock the hips just a few inches from side to side. Again, noticing if there's any soreness, stiffness in the low back, in the glutes and the hips. Good. Once you feel even on both sides, you'll come back to center. Again, set the left foot down. We're going to bring the knees into the chest one more time for a little hug. Maybe a few rocks, couple circles. Good. From here, this is where we're going to grab your tennis ball. So if you have 2 tennis balls, you're going to grab 2 tennis balls. If you only have one, we are going to be turning these into single legs. So you'll just do the single legs a little bit longer rather than the double tennis ball. So if you have 2 tennis balls, we're going to place the feet on the floor about hips width distance apart, as if you were going into a bridge pose. You'll lift your hips, and these tennis balls are going to go kind of either side of your SI joint. So you want to go below the bony part of your low back, outside of the tailbone, so that the tennis balls kind of nestle into the really deep glute area of the muscle. So one on each side. Again, if you only have one, then maybe you'll start with the right side and then switch to the left side. The hips will be a little uneven. So if you had something to prop up the hips, just to keep them a little even in the beginning, and then once we switch to a single leg, you'll kind of see what I mean. So for now, we're just gonna let the knee stay in a neutral position. The tennis balls underneath the hips, again, nestling into that deep muscle of the glute. And we'll hang out here for a few more breaths. Any point this becomes maybe a little too much, you can alleviate the weight, you can add more weight. You can always remove the tennis balls at any point as well, and then add them back in as needed. Now we're going to change the position of the leg. So again, if you only have one tennis ball, then you're only going to do one side of a butterfly. So if you have the tennis ball underneath the right hip. You're only going to do a butterfly on the right side. And I'm going to demonstrate with 2 because we are going to go to 1. So if you have 2 tennis balls, both feet are going to open into a butterfly. Soles of the feet together. You might notice the tennis balls kind of move, so they might need to be readjusted so they're back in those muscles. And you can kind of hit a little cramp there. So you can kind of move the tennis balls around as needed as well. And you can kind of move your hips. You can draw little tiny circles. So again, if you've got two tennis balls, you're going to go into a double butterfly. We'll hang out here for a couple breaths. If you only have 1 tennis ball, then you're going to keep the left knee, left foot on the floor, and the tennis ball is going to go under just that right hip with the right knee open only. So again, if you have 2, you're going to do 2, a full butterfly, both knees open. If you only have 1, then the right side open. Again, you can move around a little bit, or you can just hang out, let the weight sort of settle onto the tennis balls. And now we're going to turn this into the single leg. So if you had 2 tennis balls, what you're going to do is bring both legs back to center, so your knees find neutral. Once the knees are neutral, we're going to take that tennis ball out from behind the left side. So the left hip's going to kind of float in space. The tennis ball should be under the right hip. From there, you're going to open the right hip out. And then the left knee is going to stay bent towards the ceiling. So the right leg's going to go into a half butterfly. Left knee is going to stay bent. Tennis ball underneath the right hip. And here, we're going to bring that right knee up and down. So just little lifts and lowers to massage that tennis ball into that tight area in your glute. Again, if at any point this becomes too intense, you can take a break, remove the tennis ball, add it back in. You can play with how much weight you're putting on the ball itself, especially if you maybe have a firmer ball than the tennis ball. Good. We're going to take just a couple more breaths here. Now let the right knee open out, and we're just going to hold here for 5 breaths. Right knee open in a half butterfly. Left foot is on the floor. Left foot is still lifted. Next, exhale. Start to bring that right knee back to center. Once the right knee is at center, you'll lift both hips. Use the glutes here. Switch balls. So now you're going to place that tennis ball underneath the left hip. Again, you're going towards the meaty part of the glute, either side of the bony part of your low back, bony part of your tailbone. From there, right knee is going to stay lifted, right hip will stay lifted. You'll start to open the left side out into a butterfly. And then once you come to that butterfly, you'll lift the knee and lower the knee. So we're essentially kind of just massaging that ball into the muscle. If the lift and lower is too much, you might just hold. Got a few breaths here. Next time the left knee opens out full, let that left knee go nice and heavy. The weight settle onto the balls. Come out when needed, if needed. 5 breaths here. Start to bring the left knee slowly back to center. Once that left foot's firmly planted, engage the glutes, lift the hips. Remove the tennis balls, have them handy. We're going to use them right again, but this time you're just going to give yourself a little break. Lower the hips to the ground, bring your knees into your chest. Rock it out side to side, draw some circles, massage your low back. We're going to do one more lying on the floor, and then we'll start moving into some other positions. And again, if we have time, we'll do some lower legs, but I think we're only going to do hips today. So from here, step both feet back down on the floor with the knees bent. We're going to use one tennis ball this time only. So now you're going to come back into a figure 4 on your right side, bringing your right knee into your chest, cross your right ankle over your left knee. That tennis ball is going back underneath your right hip. So that kind of same glutey, meaty area. And you'll feel right away if this is too much. If it's too much, you get any twinging sensations, especially if your sciatic nerve tends to act up on you, you might skip the ball portion and only do the figure 4. And if you want a little more of a stretch, you might bring the left knee into the chest. That's only if you don't have the ball. If you have the ball, don't bring the left knee into your chest. So from here, if you have the ball, we're going to do those little rocks back and forth. So again, it's only a couple inches each direction. Ball in that meaty area of the right glute. Again, if you're feeling any sciatic twinging, please remove the ball and just do the figure 4 part itself. We got a couple more breaths. At any point you find a spot that's maybe particularly tight or twingy, you might just kind of hold there. Hips are going to come back to neutral. Use that left leg. Engage the glutes, lift the hips, remove the ball. Lower the hips, uncross your legs, windshield wiper the knees a few times side to side. And then we're going to come back into a teepee. Knees together, feet wide, just a moment to release the low back and sacrum. Okay, now heel toe the feet back into neutral, hips width distance apart. We're going to come into figure 4 now on your left side. Draw the left knee to the chest, cross your left ankle over your right knee, find figure 4. Again, if you have sciatic issues, you might just stay right here for a little more, maybe draw the right knee to the chest. Otherwise, you'll add the ball. So you'll lift the hips, engage the glute, slide the ball underneath the left hip. Find that softer, muscly area in the left glute. And then you are settling as much weight there as it is comfortable, as it's safe for your hips and low back. And then same thing. Once you start to settle, you'll rock it a little bit side to side. You might move the ball to or adjust as needed to find the places that really need it. I'm going to hang out here, a few breaths. You can also kind of play with tilting the hips a little up and down, just sort of massaging that ball a little bit differently. We've got about 5 more breaths on this side. Again, to come out, we're going to find that weight back in the right foot. Engage the glutes, lift the hips, remove the ball, lower the hips back down to the floor, uncross, set both feet down, windshield wiper the knees. Bring the knees into the chest, draw some circles. Good. Now, one ball for this next one, and you're going to find the spot. So find your right hip bone, and then on your outer right hip, you're going to kind of trace that hip bone toward it, sort of to the center of the outer right hip. And then that's where the ball is going to go. So from here, you'll extend the right leg forwards. We're going to take the left foot, bend the left knee, cross it over the right. It's going to feel a little awkward to get into in the beginning. Reach your right arm over your head, and we're going to slowly start to roll to your right side. So I've got that left foot on the ground to kind of take some of the weight. You'll roll over onto your right side. You can prop your head with your hands. You can place your head on a block or a pillow. You might even come up a little higher. The higher you bring the head and shoulders up, the more weight it's going to force lower onto the right hip. So it might feel better to keep the head and shoulders on the ground. Again, that left foot is there for support. If it's uncomfortable to have the foot in front of the right leg, you can always tap it behind. You're going to try to not roll over and dump it as well. So we're going to be here a few breaths. So again, we're on the right side, and the tennis ball is under the right hip, just below where your right hip bone is. We've got a few more breaths here. Start to return to your back, lower your head, gently roll yourself over. Give the right knee a hug into your chest. Set both feet down, and now you'll find that same spot on the left side. So your hands are going to find your left hip bone. Trace that over to the left hip, and that ball is going to go just below where that left hip bone was. From there, we'll extend the left leg, cross the right leg over the top. So as you roll to your left side, you have the support of the right foot to hold your weight. And then again, your head might be on the ground. You might support your head with your hands. maybe a pillow or a block. And then we're just going to kind of play, sort of rolling a little back and forth. You could even, if you're propped up more, kind of roll forwards and down. As if you were rolling the ball up and down the left hip. So we're going to be here, another 8 breaths or so. Good. Last couple of breaths on this side. Good. And now, again, you're going to slowly roll onto your back. Take your time to come off the balls. Set them to the side. Again, draw your knees into your chest. Give them a hug. Draw some circles with your knees. Good. Now from here, we're going to roll over onto your belly. So if you are in a position where you're not facing me, feel free to move yourself around. And then you're going to come onto your belly into a Sphinx pose. Climbing up onto your forearms. We've got another 2 little stretches, exercises to do. We might run out of time, so there might have to be a part 2 to this, but we're going to try and get them both done. So again, you might have 2 balls or just 1. 2, if you have them, just 1, you're going to switch sides. So now we're going to do your psoas area, and I should have had you find it when you were still on your back, so I apologize for that. You can roll to one side, and what you want to do is, again, find that hip bone, and then trace that hip bone down and in, and that's where your ball is going to go. So again, hip bone down and in a few inches, little softer area, and then from there, you're going to lie onto it. So again, you might do 2 at once, or just 1, and then if you're doing just 1, you're going to switch them out. So I've got 2 under there right now, pretty intense with 2. So if you wanted to start with 1, feel free to start with 1. And the same thing, you're just going to kind of move around on it a little bit. Little rocks, little tiny circles. You could stay in Sphinx. More sensation, you're going to lower yourself all the way to your belly. Again, that's going to add a little more weight, pushing downwards. So it'll add a little more pressure from the balls. So you're free to maybe have your head resting on a pillow or your forehead on your hands, or you could stay in Sphinx as well, your choice. We're going to be here. You're about halfway. So if you were doing just one side, switch hips now, and we'll be here another 6 to 8 breaths.
If you are not even on both sides, go ahead and stay a little bit longer until you are. If you feel that you're even, we're going to slowly remove each one of those balls. Keep one of them handy. Now we're going to go back to single leg. Come back up into your Sphinx. So you climb back up onto your forearms, elbows under your shoulders. We'll come into a half frog from here. So you're going to take your right knee, slide it outwards with a slight 90-degree angle out from your hip. The ball now is going to go on the inside of your right knee, kind of in that little divot or pocket. And then same thing, you'll be here, you're just going to kind of roll it. Now you're going to roll it up and down the inside of the right leg. And we're staying in Sphinx just because it adds a little bit more to the groin stretch. But if you'd like to come onto your belly for comfort, feel free to do that as well. Adjust the ball if needed. If it rolls out from underneath you, or you just want to move it around to a different area, you can draw some circles too. Kind of circling the knee, little circles of the hips. We've got a couple more breaths here, and then we'll switch sides. Go ahead, reach down, grab your ball. Extend the right leg back to meet the left. Take a moment in Sphinx, kind of let the hips wiggle out. And then we'll take the second side. You'll stay in your Sphinx on your forearm, slide the left knee out to the left at a slight 90-degree angle. That ball now is going to go in the divot above the left knee. So it's kind of lower left thigh. And then same thing, you can hang out, you can roll that ball around. For me, I found some pretty tight spots, more up towards my quad to work through. So kind of play around with where you feel the tension or tightness, what might need it more. We'll stay here for a few breaths until we're even on both sides. Last couple breaths. Go ahead, reach down, grab your ball. You can set them both down to the side now. Extend the left leg back to meet the right. Take one last breath in your Sphinx, pulling the chest forward, using resistance from the forearms against the floor to lift just a little higher. Big breath in. As you exhale, let the forearms start to fan out to the side. You can stack the palms and place your palms on top of the hands, or sorry, your forehead on top of your hands. You can also slide the palms slightly forward and then bring one cheek, one ear to the floor. We're going to rest here for a few breaths. To widen the low back, let your heels turn out and the toes roll in. And take big, deep breaths. And now really focusing on feeling the breath in the low back. So kind of low back, low ribs. So as if you were taking belly breath. But now finding that breath directing to the back of the belly. Bring your head to center. Release the hands, place them under either shoulder. Tuck your toe. Press the knees into the floor. Draw your navel to your spine. Your next exhale, slowly press yourself up to all fours. When you get to all fours, draw a couple circles, circling your hips around your knees, shoulders around wrists. After a couple circles in each direction, come to seated. Any seated position that feels good to you right now. Cross-legged seat, butterfly. Give yourself a little wiggle side to side, adjusting, sitting firmly on the floor. Take a big inhale, now circle your arms overhead. Exhale, connect your palms, trace your midline, bring your hands to your heart. We're gonna do that 3 more times. Big inhale, circle, fill the body with breath. Exhale, take it down. And twice more. Big inhale. And exhale. This time, inhale, circle the arms. Connect the palms, bringing the thumbs this time to your forehead, center of the eyebrows. May your mind always know peace. Bring your thumbs to your lips. May your words always speak peace. Thumbs to the center of the heart. May your heart always feel peace. Thank you all for joining me today.